Hi, my name is Michelle and I am the trip director for Spirit of Freedom here in Cairns, and I am also a Master Reef guide. Today, Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef has asked me to answer a few of your reef questions, so here we go. So my first question is from Thomas, who asks, what's the difference between a barrier reef and a fringing reef? Now, fringing reefs are generally found around islands or on shorelines. Barrier reefs are generally found, they can be found near there, but there's always some sort of body of water in between. A great example of what this looks like is a bathymetry map from deepreef.org. If you have a look here, you can see the Great Barrier Reef sitting on the Queensland Plateau. And the fringing reefs would be the red that's up against the shorelines, like that of near the Daintree rainforest, and also around our continental islands like Lizard Island, Fitzroy Island, and even coral cays like Green Island here just off of Cairns. So with fringing reefs, it's all about location, location, location. Those reefs prefer to be closer to a shoreline of some sort. So my next question is from May, who asks, what is your favorite thing to see on the Great Barrier Reef? And hands down, since I first even found out that these animals existed, these are now my favorite thing to see on the Great Barrier Reef. Every June and July, we have a very special aggregation, the only known aggregation in the world of a very, very special whale called a dwarf minke whale. Now, a dwarf minke whale looks like this. They migrate up here to warmer waters during their winter in Antarctica. They bring their calves with them. The waters here for them are very safe. We don't have very large predators like killer whales that would generally be hunting the whales, and also humans, and in the marine park they're completely safe. So they are comfortable aggregating and actually visiting dive boats when they have people in the water. Because this is a thing and we can't stop them from coming and visiting, and also we don't want to close the marine park for these 2 months, we've created a program with the minke whales in which that we are able to be in the water with the minke whales. What we generally do is we put some float lines out behind the boat while the boat is stationary. Divers and snorkelers are able to get in the water and hold on to this line, and then they just wait. Now it's up to the minke whales to interact with the humans, so they completely run the show. If they don't want to come and visit and have a look at anyone, then they don't come in, but there are quite a few that actually do want to have these really close interactions. Those close interactions probably one of the reasons that I'm absolutely in love with them. There is nothing more incredible than a whale that's about 7 meters long, swimming straight up to you, opening its eye and looking you up and down. It's just something that you end up feeling in your soul. It's absolutely incredible. So I do recommend, if you have the opportunity, please come out and join us in the Great Barrier Reef and do a minke whale expedition. It'll just blow your mind. So my next question is from Taylor, who asks, how are the reefs formed and how did the Great Barrier Reef get so big? Now the reefs formed thousands of years ago. It all started when the climate began changing. The ice caps began melting, the sea level began rising. Now the original continent of Australia was known as Sahul, so it actually expanded out quite far into what's now the Great Barrier Reef. So there was a shallow ridge known as the Queensland Plateau that expanded out into the Coral Sea, and you can see from this bathymetry map from deepreef.org, the yellow, orange, and red areas indicate the shallower portions of the Great Barrier Reef, while your green, blues, and purples are the deeper parts of the Coral Sea and the continental shelf. Once that sea level began rising, it brought with it coral larvae from other parts of the world where already coral seas had developed. Those coral polyps began clinging to natural substrates, limestone basins, and all kinds of things that it could find along the coastline. And keeping up with the sea level rise, the coral began spreading itself on these outcropping areas and began rising. Now, if you look down to the very southernmost end of the Great Barrier Reef, you'll see that it basically drops off pretty close to shore. So it's not shallow enough for corals to actually populate the area. That's why the corals stopped growing pretty much past the town of 1776 and in the Bundaberg area down south. And the very northern end of the Great Barrier Reef, there is a very powerful river, the freshwater river that runs off of Papua New Guinea. And that pushes very far out into the coral sea, that fresh water. So you'll notice that the coral reefs past the deltatic reefs at the very top of the Great Barrier Reef stopped growing there as well. So there's kind of that border barrier. And then on the eastern side is the deep water. The coral likes shallow water. So the continental shelf, again, acts as a natural barrier there. So the corals do not continue growing further out. However, on to my next question, what kind of reef is Osprey Reef and why is it so far offshore? Osprey Reef is also part of that Queensland plateau. It actually was part of mainland Australia when all of the continents, including South America, Africa, subcontinent India, and the Arabian Peninsula were all connected as one continent called Gondwana. 180 million years ago, that continent began breaking up into the continents we know today. Osprey Reef was part of an ancient mountain range and kind of still is just left out there on that Queensland plateau. The sea levels began rising around it, and again, corals at this point were already in the ocean, already growing in certain tropical seas. Some of those larvae would have began growing on the steep shelves of Osprey Reef. So what happens next is that the coral continually growing up as the sea level rose, following and chasing the sun to the surface because that's where it gets most of its food, creating this beautiful atoll. As the sea levels rose, osprey sunk, the coral rose above, creating this beautiful ring around the outside of coral. So here's another bathymetry map from deepreef.org of Osprey Reef, and you can see the pink here indicates where the coral height is now all the way around the edge, and the mark of a coral atoll again is the lagoon in the middle, which drops down to about 70 meters at some point on lagoon. So that explains to Kate also what kind of reef Osprey Reef is and why it is so far offshore. Our next question is from Fred. Fred asks, what is a Master Reef Guide and how do you become one? Well, Fred, a Master Reef Guide is a world-class guide and storyteller here on the Great Barrier Reef. When you visit the Great Barrier Reef with a Master Reef Guide, you won't be just seeing the reef. We provide a full immersion guest experience in and out of the water to help give you a greater understanding of this one-of-a-kind ecosystem. So what you take away from your time on the Great Barrier Reef is not going to be just photos and a couple of memories and maybe questioning, I don't remember the name of the reef. It's going to be a full-on emotional connection to a place that's so powerful that you're compelled to want to protect it. So like we say in the Master Reef Guide, see it, love it, protect it. And how does one become a Master Reef Guide? You become a Master Reef Guide by first working for a high standard tourism operator within the marine park. And also be the type of person who is really focused on giving your guests the best experiences every single day. Obviously safety first, but on top of that, making sure that their trip to the Great Barrier Reef is one of a kind. Once you're identified as the type of person that likes to do that by your employer, you're then nominated to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority during the nomination period. If your nomination is accepted, you'll then go through a nerve-wracking interview panel process, and all the successful candidates from there will then go on to train as Master Reef Guide. Thank you all so much for sending in your questions and for listening to this video. I hope you did learn something, and I hope you did enjoy it, and I really hope that we get to see you very soon out on the Great Barrier Reef.